Hello, everyone. We are live here. I have a very wonderful guest on today. This is Stefan from Sanity for Sweden. He has a YouTube channel as well. He speaks about issues of populism, government, etc. And I really enjoy his content, and I'm really happy to have him here. Please let me know out in the chat if someone can just give me a thumbs up or an okay to let me know the video and audio are all right. And once I know that for sure, we'll continue on. So basically, I'd like to first off say thank you to Stefan for coming on. I'm going to pass it over to him and he can introduce himself and just let us know what his channel is about and how he got started.
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. I've been watching some of your work and what you do in Canada. It's great to see. And I was watching you singing in Manchester. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I started the channel when the campaign started for Brexit, the referendum in the UK. I had two friends, very good friends in the UK, and I was watching them debating, and I thought they were so angry, and the other guys were very angry. It was very strong words that was used, and I became interested. I thought, why are they so upset, and what is this about? I never liked the EU. I voted against Sweden becoming a member, and I voted against Sweden joining the Euro project. So I never liked it. But as these discussions went on, I realized I didn't know very much about it. So I started to study. And I studied the EU website and, read most of it, I think. There's a lot. But as I was reading, I was starting to become pissed off and upset about what this was. And then I got this very strong urge to talk about it because the Swedes in general didn't know. So, and I wanted to talk, so I started the channel. That's basically what happened.
Well, that's interesting because it seems like every time I interview a YouTuber who's doing this kind of work, they say something similar. It's often not people who are loud and obnoxious and love to fight or debate. Many of us are quite private. We enjoy calm, civil discussion. We enjoy our time at home. We might not enjoy conflict and fighting. And yet here we are saying, enough is enough. I'm frustrated. And everybody is so apathetic. I don't know if you get that impression in Sweden, but in Canada, that's been very frustrating for me as well. The apathy, the Canadians that just don't want to learn, they don't care. And when you try to tell them, they are so afraid of being called a name like racist or intolerant that they won't speak about it. So I don't know, is that the same sort of environment and atmosphere in Sweden right now?
Yeah, I would say, yes. And you're right. This is frustrating. And, I just thought this information must get out. And I didn't want to sit around being grumpy, And I had this was a very strong urge to talk, basically. And I didn't know what was going to happen, but I just started talking. And then I got some feedback, and I got encouraged and so on. But yes, in Sweden, it's actually there was an interview done by mainstream media recently about the EU. They were talking to people in the streets, and they asked the people about who was the president for the EU Commission. This is Jean-Claude Juncker, right? But of course, these people didn't know. And this is the situation. People just don't know. They think it's pretty good or it's pretty bad, but they don't know how serious this is. This is actually an attempt to destroy Sweden's independence.
Yeah, people, I find that with the UN as well, people assume, well, we all learned, growing up in school here, that it's this peacekeeper sort of community. This is a group of people we should trust. This is a group of people that are meant to cause world peace. And that's sort of something that I think people in Canada, maybe it's the same in Sweden, sort of think about the UN. Now we don't have an EU to deal with. You guys have that extra layer of bureaucracy. It's a whole different frustration. But I know at least here for the UN, that's something people just trust them. People trust our national government as well. They'd rather trust the government and big government than trust their fellow citizens. They turn on their fellow conservative citizens, for example, but they trust, the pretty words that's, I don't think they're very pretty, but the words that come out of Justin Trudeau's mouth. And yet, an average farmer or a hardworking family man is considered taboo, and the things he says shouldn't be spoke about. I find it's very frustrating because I feel like we've been led to believe in people that we don't even know. So for you, the EU is this far away group of people essentially that are ruling over smaller nations that should be they should have their own say. I believe in small government. How do you rule over a smaller area if you don't know their concerns and their demographics? Overall, I mean, how much do you feel? I hear a lot about the UK, of course, like you said, with Brexit. So with Sweden, was there? I assume, like, what were the numbers? What were the polling numbers for people in Sweden that were pro Brexit or against it? How did it affect Sweden? Over here in Canada, we just talk about the UK mostly. So, or we talk about, pardon me, like England mostly, really.
I didn't understand the question. I'm sorry.
No, just with Brexit. So when Brexit sort of happened, you said that's when your channel started. So I'm just wondering how it affects Sweden specifically, because Sweden, if I understand, is it part of the Brexit? Is it part of that whole debate, that whole vote, or is it completely separate?
Well, Sweden is not part of Brexit.
Right. That's what you guys don't have your own. You don't have your own form of trying to leave the EU.
Oh,
Are
no.
you okay? No party that's being formed to try to do the same thing. That's sort of what I meant.
There is actually one party who's trying to do the same thing. And there used to be another one. And this is the big nationalist party in Sweden that got about 20%, 18% in the last election. And they said, we want a referendum and we want to leave the EU. And then they changed their minds because this is what they say. They don't want Sweden to go through what the UK is going through. They don't want to put Sweden through this. But then there is another party, a very small one, who is demanding a referendum and wants Sweden to leave. And the polls, the opinions, the surveys that are done in Sweden shows basically that people are pretty happy with being part of the EU. They don't want to leave, basically. But if the question was, do you like the EU or something like this, it would be different. I'm sure about this. And I'm pretty sure about this. If we had a referendum in Sweden, the Swedes would vote to leave. Because we voted against the euro in Sweden.
Okay, so that was my next question, was about the euro.
Yeah, we voted against it. And I'm proud of this. So the Swedes are maybe a bit more aware than people give them credit for.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, that's good to see. That common sense and sanity, as you like to put in your channel, is sometimes at the forefront. I did a bit of reading. I know you have what's called the moderate party, sort of a center-right party. Is that one of the parties that you speak of that might be interested in leaving the EU?
No, the moderate party, though, they are globalists. They are basically there are 8 parties in the Swedish parliament, and 7 of them are globalist parties. Yeah, and then there's one.
That sounds like Canada. We've got, there's not a lot of choice here, or at least until the party that I'm involved in came along, the People's Party of Canada, which I won't get into. It's a whole other discussion. But I know you spoke about Maxime Bernier. That's essentially why he started his party. Was there was just the same three kind of four choices. There was nothing for people who really wanted a different type of government. I also noticed when I did some research that you have an interesting party called the Feminist Initiative that started back in 2005, and it looks like they actually got some ground in 2014, and then they tanked in 2018. Do you have a lot of feminists and radical feminists in Sweden?
I don't know, really, I don't. They are very loud. And, Sweden is sort of known because of feminism. And the politicians here in Sweden, they take pride in calling themselves feminists, you see. But the really radical ones, they are not doing too well these days. They crashed in the last election, and they are crashing in this one, in the EU Parliament election. They will not be able to send anyone to Brussels. So they're not doing too well. They have done some, well, I think the Swedes are getting fed up with them, basically. Yeah, that's what I think. But they get a lot of attention, they are invited to these panel discussions, and they are interviewed whenever there is a subject that is close to them. They get to talk. So it sounds like they are bigger than they are.
That's usually the case. The activist voices are the loudest voices, and the squeakiest wheels that get the grease, as we say here.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it's true, and it makes it seem like the whole society is overladen with whatever this issue is. And in fact, it's not really that bad. We have the same issue here. I don't consider myself a feminist. I respect some feminists that maybe went before me years and years ago. I'm very happy to live in a very free country, and I get annoyed when women in Canada push these constant feminist narratives. And when it comes from Justin Trudeau, it's even more maddening, Stefan. I can't tell you how annoying he is to listen to. Gender, 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 gender. It's just awful. So I was just curious if that was common in Sweden. It sounds like you have the same problem.
Yeah, we do, I think. I think Justin Trudeau is amusing. Now, some of my Canadian viewers will tell me that he's not amusing at all, but I find him hilarious, actually. He's like I don't know what to call him. It's just funny to watch him, funny to listen to him, and you think, oh my God, this guy is running the country. And, I think he's the corniest leader around these days. It's just, there are so many good stories for me to talk about when it comes to Justin Trudeau. And
The corniest leader around. That's a
yeah,
perfect, it should be the Liberal Party's mantra.
yeah. He sort of embraced the whole thing, right? The whole thing that we
Yeah.
are having problems with. He just embraced it, and he's going for it full blast.
Well, and that's
So
just it. It's funny because you have to laugh or you'll be too angry, because the truth is that he has a majority government and he's acting like such a dictator. And I think that we all expected him to be incompetent. We all thought, okay, he's really not doing a good job. He's botched everything from pipelines to, even he's managed to lose money and have major issues with legalizing cannabis, which I don't even know how you can fail at selling cannabis in Canada. But he's managed to make major errors and piss off people from all over the country and many people that voted for him. We all knew that, but he's dangerous too, because he's this sort of puppet for a much larger agenda, and he's really pushing through the legislation, pushing through bill after bill, and we're really, really concerned about where he's moving forward with free speech and the way he speaks to Canadians and shuts people down, and kind of a very narcissistic. It's scary because he's got so much power right now.
the reason I think it's still funny is I think he's going to lose in the next election. If he was going to win, then this would be serious, of course. I wouldn't be laughing so much, but I know he's not doing well. And this makes it sort of interesting. It gives me hope for us all, basically. You can't do this and get away with it.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think when we first had our kind of our pre-meeting before this live stream, because I think you said this is your first live stream, correct?
Yeah.
Excellent. We talked a bit about, I think, the India trip, and I mean, you do have to sometimes sit back and chuckle a little bit and just make fun of him, because some of the stuff he does is it's comical, it's theatrical, and he really is just quite embarrassing when it all comes down to it. So he's both dangerous and embarrassing. It's an interesting combination.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, not he should not be the leader of a G7 country, but that's I think many of us know that here. So I'm hoping you're right, Stefan. I really am. I'm really hoping he's out in October, and we will see what happens. But the polls, you can't trust anything, because I don't know what your situation is with media in Sweden, but we have very similar to the BBC. We have what's called the CBC, and
Yeah.
it's a state-funded, tax-funded media that's generally quite biased in whatever direction the government that's in power currently is going. So it's pretty obvious, it's pretty blatant, and it's very, very frustrating. And so it's very hard to trust articles. It's hard to trust polls. They don't seem to really, when they call people to get answers, they don't really call certain people in certain areas, and then they only, you say, go to an urban center, and then they wonder why all of their answers are is going in a certain direction and the rural people aren't represented, that sort of thing. So it's very hard to trust, but people say that he's doing well in the polls. I don't know how. I don't know anybody, even people that voted for him and are liberals, long life liberals, that aren't going to vote for him. I don't think I don't know. I just don't see it. We'll find out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What your guy Bernier? That's his name, Bernier.
Yes, Maxime Bernier.
Maxime Bernier. Somebody said something about Maxime Bernier, when he just started, and I looked at him, and I immediately liked him, and this is for like a gut instinct liking that I got for this guy. So I think he's very good. I hope he will be doing well. It was about the same reaction I got when I first listened to Matteo Salvini of Italy. Just when he opened his mouth, I just started to like him. So I think he's a good guy.
Well, I've met him a couple of times now, and I spoke with him on the phone. I did a parody song for him when he first broke off. He was a member of the Conservative Party of Canada,
Yeah.
and he put out a series of tweets about multiculturalism and sort of radical multiculturalism, and how diversity is being pushed in a certain way that maybe isn't positive. And he got the conversation going. He made people angry. He made people excited to see what he was saying, and it made the party leader quite upset. And so basically, Bernier, I don't know how long he'd been planning it, but he just essentially broke off. He would have been the party leader. I think he lost by a couple of percent, something like that. But anyways, he's very strong on certain ideals that you just can't say when you're a member of sort of a mainstream party. Most leaders of the parties here, each MP, each member of parliament, has to stick to a certain sort of prescribed party line, and it can be very hard on people who have certain ideals that they believe in. And he has a vision for Canada, and love him or hate him, many people hate him for various reasons. The left hates him because they think he's a bigot and a xenophobe and a misogynist, which he's not. And then the Conservative Party hates him because we're now, splitting the vote. And of course, we do want Trudeau out, which is a very big concern, and I respect it. So there's a lot of tension in Canada, because right now the right in Canada has been split. And so we have sort of a little mini war between the Conservatives, and then the Liberals think we're all racist. And then there's the conspiracy theorists that think that I'm being paid by globalists. And if I am, I certainly haven't got the check yet. I'm not exactly rolling in money. So it's just ridiculous. There's all kinds of people that have many opinions, but he's gaining support. And now that we have candidates like myself, we can represent and door knock across the country instead of just being on social media. So we'll see. There's populist uprisings all over the world. I don't know how this is going to go. We're going to work as hard as we can, right?
Yeah. Well, I realized some time ago what it takes for these guys like Bernier or Salvini or the Swedish guy running the Nationalist Party. It takes a lot of guts, and they have to be strong like crazy, these guys, because they will be attacked, of course, more than the others. The others are more safe, the socialists and the the traditional conservatives, because they have some sort of safety around them. But these guys are out there in the open, so they need to be very powerful, these guys, in order to survive, basically. So maybe he's got what it takes, Bernier.
Yeah, he seems pretty tough, and he's just going for it. He's saying what he believes, and it definitely is stirring up the media. The media hates him. Um, a lot of people think he's just so terrible because he's just not as polite as so many. But also, there's a large group of people, the silent majority, people like myself, who grew up in a rural community where you just want to joke and laugh, and everybody's nice to each other, and the community helps each other out, and you don't need to monitor everybody's speech all the time. You just act like normal human beings. These people that don't want any more political correctness, no more BS, just some sanity, just some common sense. Lots of Canadians are frustrated. And so Maxime Bernier does speak to those Canadians who just want to be able to continue, living their normal lives, because most of us are just regular, good, hardworking citizens. And instead, now we're being called names. We're being sort of socially isolated, I guess you could say. And Maxime Bernier is saying, no, that's not right. We have to have these discussions. So immigration, he's even willing to talk about abortion. He won't make his candidates like, I have to believe in our party overall, but I don't have to have exactly the same opinion as Max. He will let me have my own freedom of belief and expression and thought. And I think that's really important. We need to do politics differently. So our party's about standing by what we say and not pandering, because in Canada, Trudeau and Scheer as well, they pander based on what the polls say. Oh, this group, we need more votes from this group. What can we give them? And it's not helping.
No, yeah, politics can be insane, really. Yeah, we have witnessed this, of course.
So that kind of leads me into what's going on in Sweden, which is it's good to talk about Trudeau, although you can only stomach him for so long. I'd like to talk about what's happening in your neck of the woods. Many of us here see and hear news stories, and we hear rumors about things like, violence and bombings and rapes and these sorts of things. We hear about sort of a migration crisis. But if we bring it up in Canada, we're often called conspiracy theorists or racists. And I want to talk to you about what's really going on, because I understand that this huge problem also caused you to actually leave the city and move to a rural location. So I assume it's pretty big. And I'm just wondering, I guess, I don't know where to start, but if you could touch on what sort of happened and when it started, mass migration, and how it's been affecting Sweden, in your view.
Well, I grew up in the 60s and the 70s, and Sweden I didn't realize it then, but Sweden was really a fantastic country to live in. And I started to notice that there was a difference maybe by the end of the 90s. And I started to feel awkward, uncomfortable, you might say, where I was living. And I always wanted to live in the country anyway, so. But in my job, for instance, I used to go to certain places to do jobs. And then there were areas where I couldn't go anymore because it wasn't safe, you see. And this is a disaster, basically. People get used to it, and but I never did. I thought this was terrible. And when the police can't go there without an escort, you have a situation. We have these areas, these suburbs around Stockholm where I used to live. It was becoming no-go zones. The police call them troubled areas, you might say. So this has been going on, but it's not just the bombings and the shootings. I mean, there's so much to it, shoplifting, drugs, robberies in the streets. Young kids are getting robbed in the streets. These things that happen, and you get the atmosphere. This is affecting the atmosphere, and you start to feel it. So when I got the chance to sell my company and my house, and my girlfriend wanted the same thing, we left Stockholm, and this was part of it. You know, this deterioration that I was witnessing, and I saw that Stockholm was about to become a shithole, basically. Yeah, it's that's how it is. So I moved.
Understandable. I think I would have probably done the same. I'm like you, I prefer the country, but especially if you start to feel that you can't be safe. Your home is supposed to be a sanctuary, a safe place, ideally. And when you live in a supposedly free society, you shouldn't have to worry about the safety. But when you start to feel like you can't, when you're on edge all the time, right? You're stressed and nervous. It's not good for the body. It's not good for the soul. So you were in Malmo. Is that like an area outside of Stockholm?
Malmö is a different town. Malmö is the worst town in Sweden. It's in the south. Stockholm is the capital city on the east coast. That's where I was living. I was not living in Malmö.
Oh, okay, I was mistaken. I thought you were for some reason I thought you had talked about Malmo or being in the city of Malmo or
Well,
town, pardon me.
I talk a lot about Malmö
Mhm.
because that's the worst place in Sweden now, and it's been for some time. It's been run by the socialists forever, it seems, and it's not doing well at all. But Stockholm is about to go in the same direction. And you have areas in Stockholm where it's really, really bad. You know, I noticed also when I moved to this place, we have this little town close by. It's about 15 minutes by car. And I go there and I noticed, I feel, you know, when you watch girls walking in the streets, I don't feel worried about them here. And this is making a difference to me because when I was living in Stockholm and I saw young girls, you know, 12, 13, 14 years old, I was concerned, you know, will they make it home? Okay, you know, and these thoughts influence you, of course, in a negative way. So I feel much better here, but I'm still concerned about Stockholm, of course. But I sort of left it, put a distance to it.
So, do you feel that the cities or some of the towns have been hit worse? So, like you said, the capital, of course, is starting to have a lot of problems. Where do you feel that has been hit the most by what's going on right now with the migrant crisis?
Well, it is the big cities. There are three major cities in Stockholm, in Sweden. It's Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Malmö. And Malmö, as I said, is the worst. A lot of violence, a lot of problems. Yes. So
And you,
that's where
oh,
it's
sorry, go ahead.
happening. But also in some minor cities, you're having some major problems as well. So it's spreading.
Now, I spoke with a gal from, she's a younger girl from Norway, would have been a couple months ago. We just did a very casual discussion about her visiting Canada. We talked about some geography stuff in Canada, and it somehow turned to the discussion of immigration when it comes to places like Sweden and Norway. And she mentioned that there's quite a well-known rift between the Swedes and like people from Norway who are I guess they have different views maybe on how they opened their borders. So my understanding is, in general, Norway had a more strict sort of hold on their border, whereas Sweden sort of opened it up. And maybe Norway is feeling like the Swedes should have maybe not done that. And that's my understanding is there's a conflict. Can you comment on that? I've heard it from a few people from Norway. I'm not sure if it's true.
Well, it is. It is true. Our neighbors here in Scandinavia, Norway, Denmark, they are concerned about what's happening in Sweden, especially Denmark, actually, because there's just a bridge, you know, between Malmö, the troubled town, and the capital city of Denmark. And they are concerned about what's happening. You have the criminal gangs growing and expanding. So, of course, they will expand into Copenhagen, the capital city of Denmark. But also there's the debates are very different in Sweden compared to Norway and Denmark. It's we are getting there now, but for a very, very long time there was no debate in Sweden because people couldn't ask questions. They would get in problems if they spoke up about mass immigration and things like this. Norway has been much, much healthier, and Denmark too, absolutely. So they are doing better than Sweden. And Norway is not part of the EU. So, and I think this is making a difference too, you know. But they have a pretty good government in Norway. I don't think they have it under control. But the Danish government, that's another thing. Yeah, I love them. You know, I used to say on my videos that we should borrow the Danish government for a day or so, and we would be okay. And I think it's a good idea because they are actually doing a good job in Denmark. They are actually trying to do something. You know, they have similar problems, but they are much more active, much more sane, basically. The Swedish government is terrible.
It sounds to me like Norway just had more, they were more proactive, they had more preventative measures. And whereas you guys now, you're dealing with reactive, measures. You have to deal with what's happening after the fact, whereas they sort of maybe thought ahead and thought maybe we should be very gentle and slow when this, they accepted, my understanding is they accepted refugees, but it was at a much more reasonable number and percentage. Is that correct?
This is true. Yeah, they got problems in Norway as well. As far as I understand it, most of the refugees ended up very close to the capital city in Norway. And they have areas there where there's problems. They had problems with rape. There are female, this is what I heard some time ago, who dye their hair black, just to avoid harassments, not to be called a whore, things like this. So they have problems, absolutely. Sweden hasn't learned. So we opened the borders, and they are basically still open. The government that we have right now is a left-wing government influenced by the Green Party, and they just they didn't learn. So we have to get a change here in Sweden quickly.
There's a question in the chat. I was going to do questions later just for everyone that's watching. But this one ties into something I was curious about too. You mentioned that there are, consequences or problems if people speak up. St. Jean, who's one of my long-standing subscribers, asks, what kind of problems if they spoke up? Many talk about Antifa being dangerous in Sweden for a long time back. So do you have Antifa in Sweden, and what sort of repercussions, both legal or social, happen to people who speak up, like you were saying, that are afraid to speak out?
Well, if we go back a few years, you will see more of these examples, but I can just, on top of my head, think of, there was a teacher working in a school here in Stockholm, and he participated in a meeting with the Nationalist Party, and he was sacked. The students went to the principal sacked him. There was another one, a writer, very well known in Sweden. He was I think he was at a dinner party together with the Nationalist Party, or some of them. He immediately lost many of his assignments. He was a columnist, for instance. He just lost these jobs, and he went sort of broke. Yeah. And on a personal level, myself, when I started doing the videos, I just got to know girlfriend, and her family and friends reacted very strongly when they heard about my videos. And my girlfriend, they started to discuss this or attack her because of this. They didn't come to me. So these things happen here.
Yes, so this is, a lot of leftists that want to argue will say, "Oh, you're still free to say whatever you like. You're not going to jail, therefore you're fine." But there is a social censorship that's what you're speaking about. Jobs that are either lost or maybe you don't get a position. That's happened here in Canada. It happened to a guy in Kamloops. I'm having a moment. I can't remember his name, but he just made a few comments on social media. They were fairly benign, but they weren't newspeak. They weren't politically correct. And he had been offered a job at the Chamber of Commerce and they fired him for it. And then they wrote an editorial in the paper and made it sound like it was his own fault. And so you just get to the point where people are the public, your peers, your coworkers, your friends, your partners, they're harassing people for having these views and they shame you. I don't know if you use this word, if it's more of maybe an American style word, but there's a word called gaslighting, and they talk about it in psychology. And it happened to me years ago in an abusive relationship with a man. And they basically are so smart and manipulative that they make you feel crazy. They make you doubt yourself. They make you think, well, maybe I am bad. Maybe this is my fault. And governments and the media are doing this on a large mass scale, and very good, empathetic people are believing it and listening. And I feel, to me, that's almost worse in some ways. That social censorship. If you don't feel like you can keep a job or a friendship, you'll sometimes just stay quiet, right? And I see that here too. Was she able to rectify? Was your girlfriend able to rectify or have any? Has she lost friends and family, or are they kind of finding a way to accept her views and your channel?
Well, there's still a problem. Yeah, that was really bad. I actually considered stopping doing the videos because my girlfriend, she was very concerned about this. Yeah, it was bad for a while, and it still is. And these people who badmouthed me to her, I don't have any contact with these guys these days. So we still have an issue. Yeah, it's interesting to look back at this time because about Trump, for instance, when there was a campaign in the U.S. for the election, and I looked at Hillary Clinton, and I thought, she can't become the president. This was like the gut reaction that I got. She can't become the president. I just thought, this is a dangerous woman. That's what I thought. And then Trump came along, and I thought, yeah, I like this guy. And I said this, you see, there was a big, huge campaign in Sweden, in media. Nobody could ever like Trump. It was impossible. And I remember this was at a party, and something came up, and I said, I kind of like the guy. You know, the reaction was priceless. It was like dead silence, and somebody laughed.
Yeah,
It
you
was
get that
crazy.
here too. They laugh or they say, "You like him? Why?" And they can't fathom it because our media also is just saying terrible things. If you tell them, "Oh, actually, he did something really good," or "There's a good policy," and they just can't believe it. So it's
No, that's right. It's funny, isn't it? It is. Yeah.
well, and now here I believe people that wear MAGA hats, Make America Great Again hats, they're being harassed and called bigots and racist because people believe that the MAGA hat is the same as the Ku Klux Klan hood. That's what people believe, Stefan. Isn't it? Like you used to talk about insanity. I don't even know what to say about that.
Right. But we're getting our revenge, because the information about the success of Trump is starting to come out. Even media here in Sweden are starting to report about it. He's doing very well, and the US is doing very well. So actually, friends of mine, maybe some of them were at the party, they are starting to, all right, maybe he was right after all. So you can gloat a little.
Oh, I wouldn't gloat. Okay, maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, I love gloating. That's
Well, it's funny because you just have to be patient with people, because most people, if you're close to them and if they trust you, will listen. Not always. I've lost friends myself. 65 years, my mom knew someone, since she was a toddler, and she basically just left our whole family as a friend because I support Tommy Robinson, and my mom wouldn't denounce that. And because she believes Tommy Robinson is a fascist, she now believes that I am a fascist. But much like your girlfriend's family and friends, they would not approach me. They just attack online or attack someone near me. They don't have the courage to come to my face and have a discussion, because if you could have a discussion like we're having right now, they might consider it differently, but no one wants to, because they want to be right. They don't want to have the truth. They want to be right. It's very frustrating. So thankfully now, with truth and being spread around on the internet, you have to dig for it. Lots of lies in there, but at least we have access to the truth, and people are waking up. I woke up. I was a leftist. In the chat, there's a girl named Gracie, Embarrassing Mom, she goes by. She has a great channel, for any of you out there watching. She left the Democratic Party in the States, and she used to think that Hillary should win. And the night that Hillary won, she was horrified because she thought all these bad things about Trump. And now she's got a MAGA hat. She can't wear it because she lives in Portland and she'll be murdered. But yes, she does have one. So.
she's got it.
Yeah, so lots of
Beautiful.
people are speaking up, and you just have to be courageous, I guess. More people are thinking this than not, right?
It takes some courage, actually. Yeah.
Well, you
I
get a lot
never
of hate,
really.
right?
Yeah, I do. I never really cared about people's political opinions in the past, and I still really don't. I'm just concerned that the information should be available to them. Yeah, and I think maybe some of them are just afraid when they won't talk to you. They are afraid that maybe they will too become a racist, or maybe they too will lose friends. They are afraid of these things. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think you're correct. It's fear. People want to be cared for and loved and accepted. That's universal, whatever race or culture we come from. We want family and love and relationships and friendships. So people are afraid of losing, and it is hard. I'm not going to pretend that I didn't care when I lost. I've lost a few friends. It hurts. It's not fun. I can handle strangers when I get sworn at and called names all the time, especially now that I'm in politics. But that doesn't bother me. It's more when you have people that you thought knew who you were. But ultimately, you just keep moving on. You dust yourself off and you get up. And I've met so many other fantastic people and had these great conversations with people like yourself, other content creators. And you start to realize that you're not alone. And then you don't feel quite as scared, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a good win for me too when I started to get friends online, viewers, brilliant, good people. Yeah, I really like these guys.
Yeah, that was actually one thing I had wrote down, was just to mention, I think quite a few of your viewers came over to my channel after. So I'm noticing very, very strong similarities between our viewers and how they speak. And I have learned so much from, I think I have some of the best viewers out there. I'm biased, but they're smart, like you said, intelligent, and they think deeply about things. And they make me think, and they make me realize I've made mistakes. And I have to sometimes admit I've done something wrong or said something stupid, right? And they're just really fantastic. They keep me honest and they're supportive. I feel very blessed. It's like a big extended family on this channel. So,
Well, that's great. I have the exact same experience. These guys, they are funny. Many of them are so funny. When I read the comments, I just sit out, I just laugh out loud. And my girlfriend comes along and says, what was that? It was a comment. Yeah, you know, and so smart, some of them, and educated, and many of them do research. So I get a lot of information. I learn so much from reading the comments. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. I probably spend a lot of my time. I do a lot of conversation, but I had to stop more and more as my channel grows. It gets hard to answer everyone, but I read all of them, even the mean ones, because sometimes the mean ones are the most fun. Just people really go for it, don't they, Stefan?
Yes.
I like to keep it as a sense of humor. I know my fiance doesn't like hearing me getting slammed in the news or whatever, but I've just stopped caring. You really get used to it. I don't think it just whatever. Like mosquito bites, you don't
Yeah.
even notice, right?
Yeah, right. Well, I have a little bit a different approach to this. I see this channel, the comment section is like my living room, you know, and I want to enjoy it myself. So I do kick people out. I do the very
That's
rude,
fair. It's your home, kind of, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
the very very rude ones. The real trolls,
Mm.
the
I've blocked
real.
a couple of trolls. Yeah, I had to, someone once made 6 brand new accounts to keep coming back. I'd block them and then they'd make a new account and come back and really just wasting their own time. So yeah, those people, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I want to speak. I want to get the feedback, but I also want to enjoy it. If I don't enjoy it, I will eventually just stop, right? And I don't want to stop. So that's what I do.
And if you don't mind me asking, it's a personal question. You don't have to answer, but just because of the things you mentioned earlier with your girlfriend and sort of the conflict that's come up because of your channel and politics, do you find that it's a bit of a strain on the relationship? Because I find for myself, it's been good because my fiance and I are on this political journey together. He agrees with me. We're growing and learning together, and he's very supportive. He's just glad to see me. I was very sick for a long time, Stefan. I had an illness for years, and so I was very thin a couple years ago. I'd lost a lot of weight, and I just wasn't doing well emotionally or physically. So now he sees me alive and free and happy and doing something I'm passionate about and fighting for my country. So he's very happy for me. But there are times when, because it's affecting even his friendships, they're kind of more left leaning. And now he mentions something about the Tommy Robinson trip, and then they go kind of silent. And now suddenly they're not texting or calling anymore. And, I think those things it's a bound to affect your family, even if you try really hard not to, right? Does she do pretty well with that? How has that been for you?
Well, she's sad about me not having any contact with her folks. Yes, she is. I have contact with a few of them who never attacked me, basically. So she's sad about this. And yeah, I think it is affecting my girlfriend. I'm sorry about this. And, as I said, there was a time when I thought maybe I shouldn't do these videos, and I actually stopped doing them. But then I felt just awful. So I did them again. I started doing them again. We do have discussions, of course, because she gets information from her channels, from her friends, and we do have discussions about Trump, about anything like this. So, but we are doing very well. We are very good at listening. Yeah,
But that
and
is the key.
she's a brilliant lady, fantastic. And we're doing well, but I think she came to a point where she had to choose. You know,
Yeah, it's a tough one because, like you said, you can quit, but then there's this empty part of you because when I started my channel, it was last July. It's coming along pretty quickly. I didn't expect it to turn into all of this, going to England and all of that kind of stuff, or getting into politics. It was just a way I was constantly ranting and having these vent sessions with Steve, with my fiance, and I figured, okay, maybe I should speak out. And it was actually a Stephen Crowder monologue. He was speaking to a group of students, and a young man came to the stage and he said, what do I do bringing a child into this world? As a conservative, we're getting persecuted. Why would I bring a child into this world? I'm afraid. And Stephen Crowder, who's normally he makes a lot of immature type jokes, but he got really serious and he basically said, you really do have to have no fear. I recommend anyone looking at it, he'll do such a better job than I'm going to butcher it, but it's about 6 minutes. I think it's just Crowder No Fear speech, and it just talks about stepping forward and speaking no matter what. It's really powerful, and that's what got me to do my very first video. It was so terrible in quality, I've deleted it since then, but I just kept coming on and turning on the cell phone. At the time, I didn't have lighting, I didn't have a good computer, and people seemed to want to listen, so you continue on, because even though it's stressful, there's been days I've wanted to quit, but then what do you do, right? Like, I would feel like I let myself down. I don't know if you can relate to that.
Yeah, I can. I think this is a road that you sort of have to go all the way. I can't think of moving away from it. You just have to go. No, I wouldn't feel complete, or I wouldn't feel good if I just stopped doing it. And it's you get the rewards. You do. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's with anything in life, I believe. People like to numb themselves to pain and uncomfortable things, uncomfortable conversations, but with all of those uncomfortable sensations, whether it's pain and physical sensations or just emotional stuff, comes, if you have that intensity, you also get to enjoy the other side, which is joy, right? And passion and all of these things. So if you are numb to all, you kind of, people shut down. I feel like people have shut down their hearts, and they're like robots, and they only speak out when it's to be emotionally reactive. What I try to do on my channel is balance head, heart, and gut. I believe that if you don't, someone gave me wisdom once, and I've always followed that. If you don't have a balance of thought, feeling, and instinct, something's bound to go wrong. So many people live in one or the other, and I find it hard to navigate hard discussions if you're that stuck, I guess, in one method, right?
Right. Well, it's very good. We have a very similar view on this. It's a personal thing. You just have to do it. Yeah. And I don't want. I did a video a long time ago, addressed to my grandson. I got a grandson, and I told him, I just wanted you to know that I was not here doing nothing, looking at Sweden going downhill. I actually did something. So, and I think there's some truth to this for myself. I don't want to end this life thinking that I didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Once I'm committed to something, I'm very I don't quit. I'm very stubborn. And so if I believe in something, I'm very loyal to it, and then as soon as it's no longer right in my conscience, then I'm done. So yeah, this is something where I feel like I'm on the right side of history. So I keep going, and it's been really quite an incredible journey. I didn't expect to do almost any of this. So it's funny looking back 2 years ago, to being such a bad place, not even really wanting to be alive. I was in so much pain. I was just suffering, and to come back around and say, no, you know what? I was Jordan Peterson that helped me kind of dive out of that, bear my suffering and be the best person I can be. And that's sort of what I'm trying to do now. And it's amazing how much kind of personal power that gives you, that sense of empowerment, I guess you could say, where you actually feel like you're trying your best. That's all you can do. We all have a gift. That's why I always say to my viewers, if you guys have any kind of a gift, musical, speaking, writing, making memes, it doesn't matter. Speak out, don't doubt yourself. All of us have something to offer. And the trick is just taking one little baby step forward at a time, right? Because it can be very intimidating otherwise.
It's a beautiful story that you have. I think it's a fantastic thing that you did. You got yourself out of there and into the light. That was very good. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And that's something I want to do on this channel, is talk about some personal stuff. So what I'm going to do, because we already are almost at the hour mark, that went very quickly.
Yeah.
I'd like to leave it up to the chat. If anybody wants to get a couple of questions going, I've got one or two sitting here. And I'd like to ask you just a couple of sort of lighter questions. We didn't get into, maybe the chat will bring up some other topics, but I'm just curious about some things. So first, we do have a question from Zedmo. Where is your Team Canada jersey? He says.
I don't have any. You can send me one. Team Canada. Yeah. I know Sweden and Canada will probably meet in the final in the Hockey World Cup. Maybe, or maybe Russia will be there. But I love these games between Sweden and Canada.
Yeah, the friendly rivalry, I guess you could say. Are you a sports fan or?
Not really. No, I like to watch hockey, you know, but not really. I got other interests now.
So there's a couple other questions. There's a sort of couple political questions. I want to ask personally. You live on a farm now. I noticed when you're inside, there's a lot of beautiful art around you, and I noticed the background of your cover photo on your channel is beautiful art. And there's something about the way you speak that, like I said, it's a bit deeper. And I would like for you to describe to us one of the nicest moments. You know, those moments where everything in your senses lines up. It smells nice. It looks nice. You feel nice. I'd like you to describe something on your farm, a moment, maybe a sunset, something with the animals you've seen. There's something about the way you speak, Stefan, and I'm sure people in the audience agree. You're a joy to listen to, and I would like to just hear some expressive speak about your current situation on your farm, because you look very comfortable there. My first video I saw of you was just sitting in that barn, and it's such a simple background. I came out of my studio and my fiance was watching you, and I sat down and I immediately subscribed. It was just such a nice thing to listen to. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you live and sort of some of the beauty that surrounds you right now.
Yeah, it's fantastic to live here. You know, when I get up in the morning, I get up quite early these days, and I have breakfast. I can't wait to get out. That's how it is. It's such a beautiful place that we moved to. Yeah, it's great. I just love it here. That's how it is. When I got here, the first week I was working way too hard, and I didn't do a video for about 2 weeks, I think. But then I thought I have to do a video, and I did. And then many of the viewers said, "You look exhausted," and I didn't realize this myself. I had been working. I've been pushing this body so hard, just trying to get everything in order. So I started to slow down. These viewers, they take care of you, don't they? They look out for you. Yeah.
That's true. I've
Well,
had viewers say to me, "Are you sure you're going to be okay? You're taking on too much. Slow down. We'll be here when you're back."
exactly. Yeah. And wear a hat. They see that I got sunburned and everything like this. And one of the moments that I really love, I do paint. The artwork that you have been seeing, it's mine. And that's probably the thing that I love the most, is to paint. I've been painting since 1996. And well, it's the best thing, painting here outside. And I'm just starting this again. So I'm looking forward to this a lot. When I paint, I feel totally relaxed, and it's just a great feeling.
So that is your art. I was wondering. That's fantastic. It's beautiful. I
Thank you.
can't draw at all. I'm a musician, but I cannot draw. So I always respect that. You really have to. So many people think conservatives aren't creative. I think that's just completely silly. But there
That's
are mostly
bullshit.
like leftist artists, I guess, that are well
Yeah.
known. But yeah, exactly. That's ridiculous. So I feel the
Mm.
same way when I sing. You get into sort of a moment where the time is just passing quickly, and you're just everything's flowing, right? It's really peaceful. And I think that's something. I'm so busy with my campaign, I have to make sure to make time for music, right? I did a hymn on Sunday, and I had to make time for it, because otherwise you get busy and suddenly you stop doing the thing that you love. It's crazy. We're strange that way.
Yeah. I just want to correct you on one thing.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sure you I'm sure you can paint.
Are you sure about that? I don't know.
Yes, I am. I'm totally sure about it.
Okay, well,
Just if
perhaps
you
I'll try.
just if you just learn some very basic things, maybe 3 or 4 basic rules, you would be able to make some great things. I'm sure about it.
All right. Well, I'll take your word on it. Perhaps I'll have to go to. They have little painting nights and stuff here. Maybe I'll have to go to one and try it out. I'm a perfectionist, so it's going to be tough.
Well, that's tough. Perfectionists don't make good painters. Well, some in the past, Rembrandt and these guys, Rubens, perfectionists.
Yes, true enough,
But
true enough. Well, it makes it interesting for piano too, because I did study some technical piano. I have my grade 8 with what's called the Royal Conservatory of Music. I don't know what you have in Sweden. So I learned, Beethoven and Bach, and I learned Romantic period and some theory and all of that. But I didn't really love music and playing. I have very small hands. Something maybe many people don't realize when you study music. Old-fashioned pianists, I always say that as carefully as possible, because that's a word that people like to joke about. Beethoven and Chopin in particular, some of my favorite artists, had massive long fingers, and I can barely reach a lot of them. So I often actually struggle with technical music, but I learned how to play off of guitar chords when I was about 15 at church in a worship team, and I started to learn to play. They called it playing in the spirit. I would just say playing impromptu, sort of learning chords and then just working within those structures. And so I've been doing that for about 18 years, and it's much more enjoyable. I just let it flow. Actually, that brings me to my next question, which was from Kel Fritzy, another one of my viewers, and yours, I think. Do you have any Islamic, or pardon me, this is the wrong question. So hold on a second. Oh, the one from Saint John. Do you have a belief in God, or are you a Christian? She was just curious.
well, I'm not a Christian. I call myself a reincarnationist. Yeah. So I believe that there was a guy called Jesus. That he was a great guy. That I do believe. But I'm basically reincarnationist. I had an experience when I was a little boy. I was 5 years old, and I was watching my body from above. And I asked my mother about it. I thought parents, they know everything. But nobody could tell me what was going on. And this happened while I was young, up until I was about 11 years old. This happened regularly, maybe, every second month or something. I could see my body from above. And ever since then, I started to look for answers. What is this? Why, if my body is there, who am I? These questions. And I concluded that we have lived before and that we continue to live. This is my belief.
So you sound like a spiritual person. You have a deeper belief anyway. I was just curious. I know you've mentioned and discussed sort of the rights of Christians. I find that's very common right now. Even people like, I'm a Christian. I left my faith for years. I studied sort of other religions. I looked into some different New Ageist type stuff. That's a whole different topic. But I did come back to my faith. And what I've noticed is that just with what's going on, especially with like radical Islam and terrorist attacks across the world. And when you do look statistically, Christians are, the most persecuted group in the world. And there's numbers of deaths that are going on around the world that nobody cares about. And I know you spoke about that. So I want to say thank you, because I always do. There's a lot of atheists and agnostics in Canada that they're not Christians, but they believe that there is an importance in maintaining Christianity and protecting Christianity. So I always like to thank people that are not of the faith that still stand up for the faith. So thank you for doing that, Stefan.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah. I can also recognize that the Christian cultures are doing well in general. I mean, and I grew up in a Christian culture. And I like the Christians. I have good conversations with them. There are some things that Christianity or the church's organized religion did, and they are still doing it, that I really hate. So I wouldn't be a church member in any form. But I like the people.
Well, humans have a really good knack of destroying good things. We can make a mess of something good, whether it's a country or a religion or an ideology. If you were to act like Jesus as every Christian really truly act like Jesus, it would be, pretty incredible.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, there's always bad people in every group that ruin it for the rest of us. Isn't that true?
it is true. Yeah.
So that does sort of now to get back to the question, since I was a little off on my order here. One more question from the chat from Kel Fritzy. Islamic parties. Do you have any Islamic parties in Sweden? We actually have a new one. It's not in Canada. It's just in Ontario. It's called I think it's the Islamic Party of Ontario, I believe is what it's called. And it's not very serious. It's not very big, but they do have some very, very fundamentalist, interesting policies that are quite eye-opening. I'm just curious, do you have anything like that you're aware of in Sweden? That's what Kel Fritzy wants to know.
But we actually don't. We don't have an Islamic party in Sweden. We had for a while. There was a party started, and they wanted to participate in the election, in the last election, but something happened, and they never got the papers in order or something. So it was never established. But I'm sure there's going to be one quite soon. I think about 8% of the Swedish population is now Muslim. So of course you will see a party starting quite soon.
And this one isn't a question from the chat. It's just another one from me that I kind of wanted to fit in earlier. You mentioned issues with rising violence, of course, rapes, etc. And I think we all in the chat are maybe understanding when you say sort of the people that are perpetrating this, is it generally members of the Muslim community that you find are causing a lot of these crimes statistically, or is it more of like the native population there?
Well, there is research done, and there are statistic reports, and they show conclusively an overrepresentation in the crime statistics with people from the Middle East and North Africa. So you make your own conclusions from this.
Yeah, fair enough. So they tell you that the areas in which they come from, which of course are often, yes, I suppose, Muslim majority countries, but they don't necessarily speak of it because they don't correlate it to the religion itself. I noticed that in Canada, if someone is of the Islamic faith and then is charged with, for example, we have people that we know by their name or where they're from, that they're most likely of the Muslim faith, and then something comes up, but the media doesn't ever want to link the two. So you never get to definitively prove that it was Islamic terror, for example, or if it was just someone with mental health issues, right? So there's a lot of people aren't even allowed to infer that these things happen here because then people just assume that you're, xenophobic or Islamophobic. Did you get that word Islamophobic? Is that thrown around in Sweden a lot? Do you get that thrown at you as well?
Not me personally, not really. I prefer talking about people, actually. I don't want to group people, really. I don't. If I can avoid it. I often do anyway. But no, I don't hear this myself very much. Racist, I hear, of course. Xenophobic. Xenophobic is probably the most used word here in Sweden. When you want to put somebody in place, you use the word xenophobe or racist.
That's a common one here too. Although here in Canada, we have what's called M103, which isn't a hard law. It's what I would call a soft law that will probably become law, in particular after what happened in Christchurch. But it's, basically the Islamophobia motion. So there's money and research taking place now from the government into online activities and criticism of the ideology of Islam and that kind of thing. So we hear that term here a lot, particularly from Trudeau and all of his fine government officials. But we hear, racist and xenophobe are probably the two most, I'd say, buzzwords in Canada right now. But there's lots of them. I actually don't think I've been called, I don't think I've been called an Islamophobe yet. That's bound to happen soon. My party has been called Islamophobic. I think that might be the one insult, Stefan, that I haven't actually heard yet. I think I've had every other one on earth.
All right. So you can check the last one off. Islamophobe.
I'll let you know when it happens, and then I'll have all of them, I guess. So,
Yeah.
There's one more question here. This one's more of a personal one from Julia B. 1955. She asks, Stefan, have you read Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton? You can hear a great reading of the audiobook on YouTube. I am also a reincarnationist, and after one OBE, knew that we were not our bodies.
Yeah, out-of-body experience.
Yeah, so Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton is the one she's wondering about.
No, I never read this one.
Okay.
No. I did read a lot about this when I was about 14, 16 years old, because I really desperately wanted some answers. There was nobody in my surroundings that could give me answers to this. Teachers, parents, friends, nobody would know. So I was looking for these books, and I did read a lot of them at this time. I remember one in particular by Jack London, actually. I don't know what it's called in English, but he wrote, this was maybe his last book that he wrote. He writes about astral voyaging. Very good. It was good for me at the time, because I thought, oh my God, somebody else is experiencing, have some ideas about this. Because you didn't talk about this when I grew up.
No, people call you crazy, usually.
Exactly. Exactly. This was a mental issue. So I was very happy to read that book, I remember.
Excellent. We've got one more question here, and then I'll probably start to wind her down here, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
So Alvaquero555 asks Stefan if he's read an EU doc titled A Global Strategy for the European Union's Foreign and Security Policy. It lays out what the EU wants for itself in the future. Have you read that?
No, I didn't read it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's quite all right.
Probably.
Sure, I'll send it to you if you want. I can copy and paste it into a message to you later if you want. So
please
since
do.
I know you're interested in the EU, there's so much information out there to keep up with it all and still have a life is so tough.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I noticed I tend to focus on the people.
Yes.
Lately, because there's so much information and all these treaties and documents, things. So, and I'm very interested in people and how they react, what they do, who they talk to, who they don't talk to, things like this. So I tend to talk about them a lot.
Yeah, myself as well. I sort of figure people like to zoom into certain finite ideas in politics, but at the end of the day, politics is people. We are just a group of people that are voting, and then we have people that are representing us. They have their own ego, they have their own good and bad intentions, they have their own relationships and their own reasons. And psychology, when you look at the psychology of how people are, and when you've experienced a lot of self-growth or paid attention to this stuff in the past, it becomes a very different perspective of all of this, right? And for me, you always look at the individual. Like you said, you don't necessarily judge by groups. It's okay to see, like I can see the statistical reality that, say, radical Islam is far more pervasive than, say, death toll by radical Christians. I can say that definitively, but ultimately when I meet someone or speak about something, it comes down to the individuals. It's not about a group of people, right? So yeah, I'm with you there. I think we need that right now with social media. Everything gets more and more polarized, and people are more and more angry. If you can just try to bring humanity and common sense and psychology back into it, it's far more interesting, and I think it's more useful because you can start to pay attention to patterns and trends. And the more you understand people and how they work, the more you might kind of actually be able to predict these things, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So last question, I think here. First, I'll just follow up on that comment. When you read the whole document, it becomes clear the EU has ambitions for a global empire. Okay, so that's the one he was mentioning earlier. So one more question for you, Stefan, from Casey Rich 13. Stefan, what is the chance of Alternative for Sweden getting into parliament in the next election? What do you think?
I think they have a good chance. Alternative for Sweden, that's the party that I like in Sweden. Unfortunately, they haven't succeeded in getting a lot of attention, and media is sort of shutting them out. So they have to work harder. I think they have an issue with the chairman. I think they do. I think he's very good. He's intelligent and so on. But they need another guy, somebody with more power, more charisma, maybe, really a powerhouse. Because this is one of the toughest jobs that you can find in Swedish politics, to be this nationalist party that want to change it all. You really need a very, very strong leader. And I don't think this is the guy that they have at the moment. But I'm rooting for them. I am a member, and I follow them closely. And I think they have a good chance in the next election, not in the EU Parliament election, but in the Swedish election in 2022.
Well, here's hoping. I'll be rooting for you from here if it's anything like the party that I'm involved in. So,
yeah, I'm rooting for your party.
Excellent. One more quick question. BBCAD, is the UN Army present in Sweden? Good question.
No, it is not. No. I don't know too much about this.
No,
Maybe
no
I
problem
shouldn't
at all.
say anything. But
That's quite all
I
right.
don't think so.
All right, so really just the last question. I'm going to ask for a personal favor because I happen to think that the Swedish accent is pretty neat. Can you say something for us in Swedish if I give you a phrase?
Absolutely.
Can you say Maxime Bernier for Prime Minister 2019?
All right. It's going to be pretty close, I think.
I think so.
Maxime Bernier att bli president. You say prime minister. Prime minister, of course.
Yes.
Of course. Maxime Bernier to be in Swedish. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. Maxime Bernier för att bli premiärminister i valet i nästa val.
Excellent. And maybe one more that could be fun. How about Justin Trudeau is an absolute moron? Is there a word for moron in Swedish, Stefan?
Oh, yeah, we have plenty of words. Justin Trudeau är en absolut idiot.
That works for me as well. I also appreciate just the corniest leader around. So maybe that'll be the title of this this video when I put it out. I will leave it there. I want to thank everybody in the chat so much for your lovely questions and comments. Not going to lie, I was a bit nervous at the beginning. This is one of the larger chats that I've done. So I think I made some dumb geography / muddled comments, so I apologize for that, but it all picked up, all is well. Thank you very much for coming on. I'll leave you with some last words. Stefan, would you like to promote your channel, or if you have any message that you feel is important or on your heart that you'd like to get out right now?
Well, first, I want to thank you for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Well, I'm rooting for the Canadians, basically, and I'm hoping for these strong Canadians, the women and the men of Canada, to rise up and unite to make the countries nice, good, decent again, and sane. Yeah, that's really what I wanted to say. And I want the same thing for Sweden, of course. I have to say something, because Sweden and Canada are quite similar.
Yes,
I think we should get along pretty good if we met somewhere. And we are about at the same, we have very similar situations, I think, in Sweden and Canada. I have greater hopes for Canada because you have an election soon. Yeah. And Sweden, there's a lot of work to be done here. But I'm hopeful for Sweden too, of course.
Well, I appreciate the support from across the ocean. It's always nice to speak with like-minded people. I see people in the chat from Germany. There's people in England. It's amazing to speak with people in you know, so many different countries that are having similar experiences and similar emotions and thoughts and just wanting to get it out. So this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us some of what's going on in your country, some of what's going on in your personal life, because a lot of your fans are here, and it's nice to get to know these faces behind the screen a little better. So I hope you'll agree to come back on eventually again here, Stefan.
Absolutely.
Right on.
It will be a pleasure.
Right on. Well, thank you again. I will leave you with my usual saying, as always, be good to each other, everyone, not because the government tells you to. If you don't mind leaving a like, and if you want to share, please do. And I will be turning this off for live. And just to let you know, Stefan, you'll still be on the call, but we won't be live in about 5 seconds here. So thank you again, everyone, for coming out. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, Kelly.